Most people wake up every morning already behind on their goals, behind on their focus, behind in the life they said they wanted to live. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack talent, but because they never design their day, they just react to it. Think about this: if you don't decide how your day will go, the world will decide for you. Notifications will pull you. Other people's priorities will consume you. And by the end of the day, you'll feel busy, but not fulfilled. High performers don't have more hours than you. They have more intention. They wake up with clarity. They protect their focus. They move with purpose. And that's how momentum is built, not by doing everything, but by doing the right things consistently. Focus isn't something you wait for. Momentum isn't something you hope for. They are the result of deliberate choices made again and again. Today isn't about cramming more tasks into your schedule. It's about learning how to design your day so your energy, attention, and actions are aligned with what actually matters. Because when you control your day, you begin to control your life. And once you feel momentum, real momentum, everything changes. Most people believe their biggest problem is time. They say they don't have enough of it. They say the day moves too fast. They say life is busy, demanding, and overwhelming. But if we're honest, time isn't the real issue. Everyone gets the same 24 hours. No one gets more. No one gets less. Yet somehow, some people move forward every single day while others feel like they're running in place, exhausted, frustrated, wondering why nothing seems to change. The difference isn't time. The difference is in design. Most people don't design their day. They enter it. They wake up and immediately react. They check their phone. They scrolled. They rush. They let urgency dictate their actions instead of intention. And before they even realize it, the day is no longer theirs. They didn't choose their focus. They didn't choose their priorities. They didn't choose how their energy would be spent. They simply showed up and hoped for the best. And hope is not a strategy. When a day is not designed, it becomes reactive by default. Other people's needs come first. Other people's expectations take over. Notifications, emails, messages, meetings, all of it pulls attention away from what truly matters. And by the end of the day, there's that familiar feeling busy, but unfulfilled. That's not a failure of effort. That's a failure of design. Intentional design means deciding before the day begins what deserves your energy. It means recognizing that your attention is your most valuable resource, and if you don't protect it, it will be spent on things that do not move your life forward. Most people assume that clarity comes after they get everything done, but clarity actually comes before meaningful action. Without clarity, action becomes scattered. Without intention, productivity becomes chaos disguised as progress. Designing your day doesn't mean rigid scheduling or perfection. It means alignment. Alignment between what you say matters and what you actually do when the day unfolds. When someone says they don't have time for their goals, what they're really saying is they didn't make a decision early enough. They waited until the day got loud. They waited until energy dropped. They waited until distractions piled up. And by then, focus was already gone. High performers understand something simple but powerful. The quality of the day is determined early, not halfway through, not at night. Early. They decide in advance what must happen for the day to be considered a win. Not 10 things, not everything, just a few actions that move life forward. And they protect those actions like they matter because they do. Without intentional design, the day fills itself, and it fills itself with noise. Design requires courage because it forces choice. Choice about what matters. Choice about what doesn't. Choice about what you will say no to, even if it feels uncomfortable. A choice about what deserves your best energy instead of leftovers. Most people never pause long enough to make those choices. They confuse movement with progress. They confuse activity with achievement. They confuse exhaustion with effectiveness. But being tired doesn't mean you were focused. Being busy doesn't mean you were intentional. Being productive doesn't mean you worked on the right things. Designing your day means setting your day, means stepping out of autopilot. It means asking yourself, what would make today meaningful? It means asking, what actions, if done well, would move my life forward? It means asking, what deserves my attention before everything else competes for it? Without these questions, the day becomes a blur of reaction. Intentional design creates boundaries. And boundaries are not limitations, they are freedom. Freedom from distraction, freedom from regret, freedom from ending the day wondering where the time went. People often think they need more discipline, but discipline without design leads to burnout. Discipline applied to the wrong priorities only exhausts you faster. Design gives discipline direction. When you design your day, you reduce decision fatigue. You reduce stress. You reduce the mental load of constantly reacting. You move with purpose instead of pressure. Pressure comes from urgency. Purpose comes from intention. Most people live in urgency. Everything feels important. Everything feels immediate. Everything feels demanding. Design allows you to distinguish between what is loud and what is important. And that distinction changes everything. A design day doesn't eliminate challenges. It doesn't remove interruptions, but it gives you a framework to return to, a compass when things get chaotic, a standard for how you spend your time and energy. Without design, even success can feel empty. You can accomplish things and still feel disconnected from your goals. You can achieve outcomes and still feel like something is missing. That's what happens when effort isn't aligned with intention. Design reconnects effort to meaning. It reminds you why you're doing what you're doing. It anchors your actions to your values. It turns the day into a deliberate expression of who you are becoming, not just what you're trying to get done. Most people wait for motivation to design their day, but motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes. Design doesn't depend on mood. It depends on commitment. You don't design your day when you feel like it. You design it because your future depends on it. Every day you live without intention reinforces the habit of reaction. Every day you live by design strengthens focus, confidence, and self-trust, because each time you honor your priorities, you prove to yourself that your goals matter. And that proof builds momentum. Momentum doesn't come from massive breakthroughs. It comes from small, intentional wins stacked over time. Wins that only happen when the day has structure and purpose. Most people don't lack potential. They lack a container for that potential. Design is the container. It holds focus. It directs energy. It turns possibility into progress. When you stop blaming time and start designing your day, you reclaim control. You stop feeling behind. You stop feeling scattered. You stop feeling like life is happening to you instead of through you. And that shift from reaction to intention is where everything begins. Most people believe focus is something you either have or you don't. They wake up and hope it shows up. They wait for the right mood. They wait for motivation, inspiration, or the perfect conditions. And when focus doesn't appear, they assume something is wrong with them. But focus isn't missing. It's unmanaged. Focus is not something you stumble into. It's not a personality trait. It's not reserved for disciplined people or highly successful people. Focus is built moment by moment through the choices you make about where your attention goes. Every single day, you are choosing what you focus on. Even when you think you're not choosing, you are. You choose to check your phone first thing in the morning. You choose to multitask. You choose to let interruptions pull you away. You choose distraction, often unconsciously. And those small choices compound. People say they can't focus, but what they really mean is they haven't trained themselves to protect their attention. They've allowed their environment, their habits, and their impulses to dictate where their mind goes. Focus doesn't disappear suddenly. It erodes gradually. It erodes every time you say yes to distraction instead of depth, every time you react instead of decide, every time you prioritize what's easy over what's important. Most people live in a state of fractured attention, half present, half committed, always thinking about what's next instead of what's now. And then they wonder why progress feels slow, why work feels draining, why momentum never seems to build. Focus is energy directed with intention, and intention requires awareness. High performers understand this. Focus begins before the task. It begins with the decision to be present, with the decision to remove friction, with the decision to create conditions where attention can stay where it matters. They don't rely on willpower alone. They design their environment to support focus. They reduce distractions before they become distractions. They don't leave attention to chance. Most people do the opposite. They surround themselves with noise and then blame themselves for not concentrating. They keep notifications on and complain about interruptions. They fill every quiet moment with stimulation and wonder why their mind feels restless. The mind becomes what it practices. If you practice distraction, your mind gets better at distraction. If you practice presence, your mind gets better at focus. Focus is a muscle. And like any muscle, it strengthens or weakens based on how you use it. Every time you resist checking your phone, you strengthen focus. Every time you stay with a task a little longer, you strengthen focus. Every time you choose depth over novelty, you strengthen focus. But when focus is never trained, even small tasks feel overwhelming. Even simple work feels heavy. The mind jumps constantly, searching for stimulation, avoiding discomfort. That discomfort is important. Focus requires sitting with difficulty. It requires staying engaged when things get boring, challenging, or uncertain. Most people escape at the first sign of discomfort. They scroll, they switch tasks, they seek relief. And in doing so, they weaken their ability to focus. Conscious choice is the difference. High performers don't feel more focused naturally. They feel the same pull toward distraction. The difference is they notice it. And they choose differently. They don't ask, what do I feel like doing? They ask, what deserves my attention right now? That question changes behavior. Focus is about respect. Respect for your goals. respect for your time, respect for the future version of yourself who will live with the results of today's choices. When you say you want success, growth, clarity, or momentum, but you constantly give your attention away to things that don't serve those outcomes, there's a disconnect. Focus realigns that disconnect. Focus says this matters more than that. But that decision must be made repeatedly. Not once, not occasionally, daily. The world is designed to steal your attention. Algorithms compete for it. Notifications demand it. Other people request it. If you don't consciously reclaim it, it will be taken. Focus doesn't require isolation from the world. It requires boundaries within it. Boundaries around time, boundaries around information, boundaries around availability. Without boundaries, attention leaks everywhere. Most people underestimate how draining it is to constantly switch contexts. They jump from task to task, thought to thought, message to message, and by the end of the day, they feel exhausted, not because they worked deeply, but because their attention was scattered. Scattered attention creates mental fatigue. Deep focus creates momentum. Momentum comes from staying with something long enough to make progress. Not perfect progress, real progress, the kind you can feel. But you can't feel progress when your attention keeps resetting. Focus allows you to enter a state where effort feels meaningful, where time feels different, where you're fully engaged. That state isn't accidental, it's cultivated. And it starts with awareness. Awareness of what pulls you away. Awareness of your habits. Awareness of when you're most focused and when you're most distracted. Most people never study their own attention. They judge themselves instead. They call themselves lazy or unfocused without understanding the patterns behind their behavior. Conscious focus begins with curiosity, not criticism. Why do I lose focus here? Why do I avoid this task? Why do I reach for distraction at this moment? Those questions lead to better choices. Better choices lead to stronger focus. Strong focus changes how you experience your work in your life. You feel more capable, more confident, more in control, because you are directing your attention instead of chasing it. Focus also requires recovery. You can't demand intensity without rest. Conscious focus includes intentional breaks, not mindless scrolling, real recovery, moments where the mind can reset without being overstimulated. When rest is intentional, focus becomes sustainable. Most people burn out not because they focus too much, but because they focus poorly. They give their best attention to the wrong things and leave to what matters most. Conscious choice flips that pattern. You choose what gets your best energy. You choose when to go deep. You choose when to step back. Those choices shape your days, and your days shape your life. Focus is not something you wait for. It's something you practice, something you protect, something you build through repeated, conscious decisions. Every moment is a vote for focus or distraction, and over time, those votes decide who you become. Most people believe momentum is something that shows up once the day is already moving. They think it happens after emails are cleared, after the meetings are done, after responsibilities are handled, after the chaos settles down. But by then, energy is already drained. Momentum doesn't start later. Momentum starts early. The first hours of the day quietly decide how the rest of the day will feel. Whether you feel capable or scattered, whether you feel confident or overwhelmed, whether you feel in control or behind. Early actions create emotional direction. When you wake up and immediately react to messages, news, noise, and other people's priorities, you begin the day on defense. You are responding instead of leading. You are chasing instead of creating. And that reactive state carries forward hour after hour. Momentum cannot grow in reaction. Momentum requires initiation. High performers understand that the morning is not just another part of the day. It is the foundation of the day. What you do early sends a signal to your mind about who is in control. It sets the tone for how you will show up when challenges arise. Early wins matter because they change identity. When you take intentional action early, even a small action, you reinforce the belief, I move my life forward. That belief fuels confidence. Confidence fuels more action. Action builds momentum. But when the day begins with delay, hesitation, or distraction, the opposite happens. You tell yourself, I'll start later. And later becomes never. Or worse, later becomes rushed, forced, and depleted. Energy is highest early in the day. Not just physical energy, but decision energy, willpower, attention, mental clarity. Most people waste this premium energy on low-value activities. They scroll. They consume, they check, they react. And by the time they turn to what matters, they're tired. Momentum doesn't require massive effort. It requires correct sequencing. Do the most important thing when your energy is highest. Do the most demanding thing before distractions multiply. Do the most meaningful thing before excuses get louder. Waiting until later is a silent decision to struggle. People say they work better under pressure, but pressure is not momentum. Pressure is compensation for a lack of structure. Pressure forces action when clarity should have guided it earlier. True momentum feels different. It feels calm. It feels steady. It feels empowering. And it almost always begins with a deliberate early move. High performers don't wait to feel ready. They act while energy is available. They know motivation often follows action, not the other way around. The first intentional action of the day doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be aligned with your goals, aligned with your standards, aligned with the person you are becoming. That alignment creates psychological momentum. When you start the day by honoring your priorities, the rest of the day becomes easier to navigate. Distractions feel less tempting. Decisions feel clearer. Confidence feels earned. But when you delay action, doubt grows. Overthinking creeps in. Tasks feel heavier. And the day becomes something to survive rather than something to shape. Early momentum is about leadership. Leadership over your time. Leadership over your energy. Leadership over your attention. If you don't lead yourself early, something else will. Most people underestimate how fragile momentum is. It's easier to create than to recover. A single early win can carry you forward, but a slow, distracted start can require enormous effort to overcome. That's why starting strong isn't a cliche. It's a strategy. Starting strong doesn't mean doing everything. It means doing something meaningful before the world demands your attention. Even 15 focus minutes early in the day can change how the entire day unfolds. Those minutes are not about productivity. They're about identity reinforcement. You are proving to yourself that progress comes first. Momentum also compounds emotionally. When you feel like you're already winning the day, stress decreases. Confidence increases. You're less reactive, more patient, more intentional. But when you feel behind early, stress escalates. You rush. You multitask. You make poor decisions. And the day feels heavy. Early momentum acts as a buffer against chaos. Challenges don't disappear, but your capacity to handle them improves. You don't panic as easily. You don't feel as fragile because you've already moved forward. Most people wait until they have time. High performers make time early before it gets taken. Waiting until later is often a form of avoidance disguised as planning. It feels responsible. It feels logical, but it often results in diminished energy and diluted focus. Energy follows action, but only when action is timely. There is a window early in the day where effort feels lighter, where resistance is lower, where focus comes more naturally. Ignoring that window is costly. Momentum thrives on rhythm. Wake up, move with intention, create a small win, carry that win forward. That rhythm creates flow. When the day lacks rhythm, everything feels fragmented. You start and stop constantly. You lose traction. You feel like you're pushing uphill. Early action creates downhill momentum. This doesn't mean rigid routines or extreme schedules. It means honoring the principle that beginnings matter. How do you begin conversations? How do you begin tasks? How do you begin days? Beginnings create direction. If the beginning of your day is scattered, the direction is scattered. If the beginning is intentional, the direction becomes clearer. Most people try to fix their days at night. They reflect, regret, and promise to do better tomorrow. But the fix doesn't happen at night. It happens at the start. Momentum is a morning decision, not a mood, not a feeling, a decision to act before excuses appear, a decision to move before doubt grows, a decision to invest energy when it's available instead of wasting it. When you repeatedly choose early action, you train yourself to trust your ability to follow through. That trust becomes confidence. That confidence fuels consistency. Consistency fuels progress. Progress fuels momentum. And all of it begins earlier than most people are willing to start. Most people don't struggle because they can't take action. They struggle because they don't know what deserves action first. They wake up with good intentions. They want to make progress. They want to feel productive. They want to move their life forward. But the moment the day begins, everything feels important. Every task feels urgent. Every demand feels necessary. And when everything feels important, nothing truly is. This is where clarity becomes the dividing line between progress and exhaustion. Clarity about priorities determines the quality of your actions, because action without clarity is wasted energy. You can move all day long and still go nowhere. You can work hard and still feel behind. You can give effort and still feel disconnected from results. Lack of clarity doesn't stop action, it scatters it. Most people act based on pressure, not priority. They respond to what's loud instead of what's meaningful. They chase what's urgent instead of what's important. And over time, that pattern trains them to live reactively. Reaction feels productive, but it rarely produces progress. Clarity forces choice. It asks a harder question then. What should I do today? It asks what actually matters today. That question is uncomfortable because it requires elimination. It requires letting go of good options to protect great ones. It requires admitting that not everything can be a priority at the same time. Most people avoid this discomfort. They prefer to keep everything open, everything possible, everything on the table. But when everything is a priority, focus disappears. Energy drains, confidence fades, clarity simplifies. It doesn't make life easy, but it makes action meaningful. High performers are not more capable. They are more decisive about priorities. They know what deserves their best energy and what can wait. They don't let the day decide for them. They decide before the day begins. Without clarity, action becomes impulsive. You jump from task to task, you start things and don't finish them, you multitask and dilute your effort, and at the end of the day, you feel tired but not accomplished. That feeling is a signal. It's not telling you to work harder. It's telling you to work more clearly. Clarity about priorities turns action into progress because it aligns effort with intention. Every meaningful result in life comes from sustained action in the right direction, not random movement, not constant active direction. Direction is impossible without clarity. Most people overestimate how many priorities they can handle at once. They try to advance everything simultaneously: career, health, relationships, finances, personal growth, all at full speed. And when they can't maintain that pace, they feel like they're failing. But the failure isn't a lack of discipline. It's a lack of prioritization. Clarity doesn't mean ignoring other areas of life. It means recognizing which area needs focus now. Focus shifts over time. Priorities change, but clarity in the moment is what makes action effective. When you know what matters most today, decision-making becomes easier. You stop second-guessing. You stop hesitating. You stop wasting energy debating what to do next. Indecision is exhausting. Clarity removes friction. It tells your mind, this is what we're doing. It tells your energy, this is where we're going. It catches your attention. This is where to stay. Without clarity, the mind keeps scanning, it keeps questioning, it keeps reopening decisions that should already be closed. That constant mental noise drains focus and slows momentum. Clarity creates commitment. When you're clear about priorities, you commit more fully to action. You're less likely to quit early, less likely to get distracted, less likely to abandon effort when things get hard, because you know why you're doing what you're doing. Most people don't quit because things are hard. They quit because they're unclear about direction, unclear about whether the effort is worth it. Clarity answers that doubt. It anchors effort to meaning. Action without meaning feels heavy. Action with meaning feels purposeful. Even when it's difficult, clarity also protects energy. When priorities are unclear, everything demands emotional investment. You worry about everything. You stress about everything. You feel responsible for everything. And that emotional overload leads to burnout. Clarity allows you to say, this matters now. That can wait. And waiting is not failure. Waiting is a strategy. Most people treat priorities as a list. High performers treat them as a filter that determines what gets attention and what gets ignored. That filter is what keeps them focused when distractions arise. It's what keeps them calm under pressure. It's what keeps them consistent when motivation fluctuates. Clarity doesn't eliminate distractions. It neutralizes them. Distractions lose power when you're clear on what you're committed to. The clearer your priorities, the harder it is to get pulled away. That's why clarity must be revisited daily. Not once, not occasionally, daily, because the world constantly competes for your attention. And without regular clarity, priorities drift. Urgency creeps back in. Reaction takes over. Clarity is an ongoing practice. It requires reflection. It requires honesty. It requires the courage to admit when you've been busy but misaligned. Most people confuse clarity with complexity. They think clarity requires detailed plans, long lists, and perfect systems. But clarity is often simple. It's knowing the one or two actions that will make the biggest difference today. It's knowing what success for the day actually looks like. It's knowing when to stop. Stopping is as important as starting. Without clarity, people overwork. They push past diminishing returns. They keep going because they don't know when enough is enough. And that leads to exhaustion without satisfaction. Clarity defines boundaries. It tells you when to start. It tells you when to stop. It tells you what to protect. Those boundaries preserve energy and confidence. When you consistently act with clarity, trust builds. Trust in yourself. You begin to believe that when you decide something matters, you'll follow through. That belief strengthens identity. Identity shapes behavior. When you see yourself as someone who knows their priorities and acts on them, action becomes more natural, less forced, less chaotic. But when priorities are unclear, self-trust erodes. You start questioning your discipline, your motivation, your capability, not because you lack them, but because you're misdirecting them. Clarity redirects power. It turns scattered effort into focused movement. It turns busy days into meaningful days. It turns action into progress. Most people don't need more strategies. They need more clarity, more intentional choice about what deserves their time, energy, and attention. because the quality of your actions will never exceed the clarity of your priorities. Most people underestimate the power of small actions. They think change requires massive breakthroughs. They believe success comes from dramatic moves, big decisions, and sudden transformations. They wait for the moment when everything clicks, when motivation explodes, when life finally shifts. And while they're waiting, nothing changes. Extraordinary results are not created in moments of intensity. They are created in moments of intention. Small moments. Ordinary moments, repeated consistently over time. This is where most people lose patience. They take a small action and expect a big reward. They try something once or twice and look for evidence that it's working. When the results aren't immediate, they conclude it's not enough. But small actions are not meant to impress you in the beginning. They are meant to compound. Compounding is quiet. It's subtle. It's almost invisible at first. That's why people abandon it. They can't feel the payoff yet. They can't see the progress yet. So they stop. Not because the action didn't matter, but because they didn't stay long enough for it to matter. Small intentional actions work because they bypass resistance. They don't require extreme motivation. They don't overwhelm the mind. They feel doable, repeatable, and sustainable. And sustainability is the secret most people overlook. Anyone can push hard for a short. Anyone can sprint, but progress that lasts is built through actions you can repeat even on low energy days. Small actions reduce friction. They lower the barrier to starting. They make consistency possible. They allow momentum to grow naturally, but only when they are intentional. Mindless small actions don't compound. Busy work doesn't compound. Random effort doesn't compound. Intention is what gives small actions direction. Intention connects action to purpose. When you choose a small action that aligns with a bigger goal, you are casting a vote for the person you are becoming. Each repetition strengthens that identity. Identity is where compounding really happens. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. And habits are built one action at a time. Most people think habits are boring, repetitive, limiting, but habits are simply repeated decisions. And repeated decisions shape outcomes. Small actions done once feel insignificant. Small actions done daily become powerful. The problem is that the mind wants immediate feedback. It wants proof. It wants reassurance that the effort is worth it. Compounding doesn't provide that early. In the beginning, effort outweighs reward. You show up, you do the work, and nothing seems different, but something is changing. Your discipline is growing. Your confidence is strengthening. Your standards are rising. These internal changes come before external results. Most people quit because they only measure progress by visible outcomes, but visible outcomes lag behind internal shifts, always. Small intentional actions change who you are long before they change what you have. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. Intensity burns out. Consistency builds. Small actions allow you to stay in the game long enough for compounding to take effect. Think about momentum like pushing a heavy wheel. At first, it barely moves. Every push feels like an effort with no payoff. But you keep pushing. Slowly, the wheel starts to turn. And once it's moving, each push requires less force. That's compounding. But most people stop pushing before the wheel ever turns. They change routines too often. They jump from strategy to strategy. They abandon actions before they've had time to work. Not because the actions were wrong, but because patience was missing. Small actions require trust. Trust that effort is not wasted. Trust that progress is happening beneath the surface. Trust that today's discipline is building tomorrow's ease. Intentionality keeps that trust alive. When you know why you're taking a small action, you're more likely to repeat it. You're less likely to dismiss it as pointless. You understand that it's part of a larger system. Systems outperform goals. Goals tell you where you want to go. Systems determine whether you get there. Small actions are the building blocks of systems. A system doesn't rely on motivation. It relies on structure, on repetition, on decisions that don't require debate every day. When small actions become automatic, progress accelerates. Most people wait until they feel confident to act. But confidence is a byproduct of evidence. Evidence comes from action, and action begins small. Each small action is proof. Proof that you can follow through. Proof that you can stay consistent. Proof that you are capable of progress. That proof accumulates, and enough proof, self-doubt weakens. Small actions also protect against overwhelm. When goals feel too big, the mind resists, it procrastinates, it avoids, it delays. But small actions make the goal approachable. They break it down into something manageable. Manageable leads to momentum. Momentum leads to belief. Belief leads to higher standards. Higher standards change behavior. This chain reaction starts with a single intentional step. But that step must be repeated. Most people romanticize transformation. They imagine overnight success. They celebrate dramatic stories, and those stories distort expectations. They hide the years of small actions that came before the breakthrough. Breakthroughs are rarely sudden. They are the visible result of invisible consistency. Small actions also create resilience. When progress depends on massive effort, setbacks are devastating. But when progress is built on small actions, setbacks are survivable. You don't collapse because the system remains intact. You adjust, you continue. That flexibility is a strength. Small actions are forgiving. They allow imperfection. They allow learning. They allow growth without pressure. Pressure kills consistency. Intentional small actions relieve pressure because they shift focus from outcome to process. You stop obsessing over results and start valuing repetition. Repetition creates mastery. Mastery creates confidence. Confidence fuels ambition. Ambition then drives bigger goals. But the foundation remains a small, intentional effort. People often ask what the fastest way to success is. Speed is the wrong metric. Sustainability matters more. And small actions are sustainable. You don't need to do everything today. You need to do something today. And then do it again tomorrow. That rhythm is powerful. Over time, small actions stack. Skills improve. Knowledge deepens. Capacity expands. What once felt difficult becomes normal. What once felt impossible becomes expected. And because the growth was gradual, it feels natural. This is why small actions are underestimated. They don't feel dramatic, but drama is not required for transformation. Direction is. Small intentional actions keep direction consistent. They prevent drift. They reinforce identity. They align daily behavior with long-term vision. Without them, goals remain ideas. Dreams remain wishes. Potential remains unused. Most people don't need more ambition. They need more consistency. Consistency doesn't come from motivation. It comes from designing actions small enough to repeat and meaningful enough to matter. When small actions are intentional, they become unstoppable. They outlast motivation. They outgrow doubt. They outpace intensity. And over time, they create results that look extraordinary to everyone else, even though they were built through ordinary choices repeated again and again. If there's one thing to remember, let it be this: your life doesn't change in someday moments. It changes in daily decisions. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need more motivation. You don't need to wait for the right time. You need intention. You need clarity. You need action. Design your day before it designs you. Choose your focus before distractions choose for you. Build momentum early. Protect what matters most. And commit to small actions that move your life forward. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Because every day you act with intention, you become someone who follows through. And that identity is more powerful than any strategy. So take one action. Just one. Right now. Think less, act now.